We are live.
Sharon, Rakhi, please start.
Good evening, everyone.
Yes, Dr. Sharon, please.
Yes, good evening, everyone, and welcome to this 39th Eye Donation Fortnight webinar by All India Ophthalmological Society, along with the EBAI. We have a wonderful program set for today, and a very, very eminent faculty from all over India and international faculty, and we welcome everyone and thank you so much for your time. Our chairpersons and co-chairs for this evening are a very erudite set of ophthalmologists, Dr. Samar Basak, Dr. Major General J.K. Parihar, Dr. J.S. Tithyal, Dr. Kuresh Maskati, Dr. Namrata Sharma, and Dr. Rishi Mohan. We also have a very, very interesting panel of doctors for discussion and, of course, our great speakers. So without further ado, we'll start our program. Dr. Namrata Sharma, ma'am, would you like to say a few words before we start?
I would request Dr. J.K.S. Parihar, who's the president of Eye Bank Association of India, to say a few words, please, first.
Thank you, Dr. Malika. It's a great honor and privilege to be
Sir,
Yes, sir, you are not
a
audible.
little louder, sir.
Am I audible now?
So your voice is very feeble.
आप दोनों सामने हो तो आवाज कहाँ निकले? I think Namrata can take over.
No, we
No,
can.
now it's better, sir. It's
Better,
better.
sir.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As we all know that we are observing the 39th eye donation fortnight, and the background is very, very interesting. It was in 1985 when that time the chief RP Center, Dr. Professor Madan Mohan, he had approached the Prime Minister that time, Mr. Rajiv Gandhi. In fact, we started with the assassination of Mrs. Gandhi, where Mr. Rajiv Gandhi had a desire to donate the eyes of her mother, but it was not possible because of the condition. And then Dr. Madan Mohan has suggested that the Prime Minister should place this, and subsequently this can be observed. So that time, Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi's birthday was 20th August. So he placed the eyes on 25th of August with his family. And subsequently, the government of India started observing fortnight as a eye donation fortnight for awareness. So all credit goes to the chief that time, and then it is continued with the RP Center, who took the National Eye Bank and direct advisor to the government of India. And later on, the other stalwarts in the ophthalmic field, all institutions in South and East have become, and now it has become a national movement. And this is very, very good to have this. And we are lagging behind after the COVID period. Our aim is to have the 2 lakhs corneas per year, so that at least with the present utilization rate of 60, at least we are able to get the 1 lakh corneal transplant. We reached up to the 55,000 corneal donations and 35,000 transplant pre-COVID area, which has gone, and despite our catching up, still we are far behind to achieve this target. So I know that the future of EBI and eye donation fortnight lies with the Professor Namrata, Radhika, and all others here, so-called youngsters, because I still feel myself young, to take up this moment ahead. So with this note, I welcome you all my fellows and youngsters, those who are part of this webinar, and I am foreseeing an excellent deliberation. I hand over to the convener, please. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for joining today. And this webinar is being done in the eye donation fortnight under the aegis of AIOS Scientific Committee, Eye Bank Association of India, and Indian Society for Cornea Refractive Surgeons, that is ISCRS, amply supported by our sponsors, who are also the brand ambassadors for the eye donation, that is the Entot Pharmaceuticals. They are also going to tell us about the big launch of the eye donation pledges that they are doing. We have Professor Rajesh Sinha, who's the secretary of the ISCRIS, and I would request him to say a few words before we begin the scientific deliberations.
Thank you, ma'am. It's a wonderful idea to have a webinar. The basic idea is to increase the awareness amongst people. And these days, online method of spreading the message is a very effective tool. And so thanks a lot for taking the initiative. And I would also like to thank Todd for, coming forward to help in this noble cause. Thank you very much.
I think we can begin the scientific talk.
Yes. Our first speaker for the evening is Dr. Neeti Gupta, who is an additional professor at AIIMS Rishikesh and is also the medical director of the Rishikesh Eye Bank. And she'll be speaking to us about eye donation awareness, a ray of hope or a futile endeavor. Over to you, Dr. Neeti.
Thank you, Dr. Sharon. Can you see my slides? Yes. So, the slideshow, please. So, at the outset, I would like to thank Dr. Namrata ma'am, the whole team of EBI for giving me this opportunity. And I would be speaking on eye donation awareness, a ray of hope or a futile endeavor. So these numbers we have been seeing for a very long time, like there are 1.1 million people who suffer from corneal blindness, and we need to do at least 1 lakh corneal transplant a year to decrease this backlog. And what we are able to achieve is only 25% of what we require till now. And these are the numbers of retrievals and the transplant of 23-24 shared by EBI, where the retrieval eye donations are 47201 and the transplants are 25,581 in India. And we are doing a lot of efforts, and the strategies to increase this corneal donation is, one is the community awareness interventions, eye donation pledges. Then we are now giving very much stress to grief counseling and hospital cornea retrieval program. And as Sir recently mentioned, that the National Eye Donation Fortnight was launched in by the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare in 1985, and this is the 39th Eye Donation Fortnight. And this fortnight is like festivals for all the eye banks, where in the whole country we are celebrating this fortnight in the form of doing a lot of awareness programs, displaying banners, and doing a lot of competitions like art competitions, like a poster competition and all, to increase the awareness among the community. And what we are doing is displaying banners in the trauma emergency so that the patient can see this, get aware by just looking at this, and then poster competitions. We are doing a lot of awareness programs. It is more during the fortnight, but this is a continuous process which we are continuing and making aware our hospital staff, nursing staff, students, MBBS students, and community awareness programs in schools, colleges, and a lot of places with Lions Club, Rotary Club. A lot of these associations are tied with us, and we promote a lot of like pledging. We ask them to ask the public to pledge for donation to increase awareness in the community. But there is very limited evidence available evaluating the actual donation post community awareness interventions. There are few studies which are published, and they say that prior knowledge of eye donation, literacy, and socioeconomic status, they do not have a significant influence on willingness to donate. Another paper by Dr. Radhika in Cornea Journal says that literacy, socioeconomic status, and prior knowledge of eye donation of the next of kin has no correlation with the donor cornea tissue procurement. So evidence, whatever is available, suggests that the pre-existing awareness does not contribute to enhance the donation. We also did a study at AIIMS Rishikesh. This was a STS project of a MBBS student, and this was done for over 3 months. And we saw the impact of pre-existing eye donation awareness of the next of kin on the donation rate after grief counseling. And this was a cross-sectional study where we recruited around 164 next of kin of the deceased family. And the awareness we saw was around 84.8% about eye donation. The willingness to donate was only 52.4%, and the actual donation was 7.3%, which was very, very less. And this is the 10 years trend, which has been shared by the Eye Bank Association. And if we see that in 2014 and 15, the number of donations were around 47,510 and the transplant were 18,887. And when we come to 23-24, it has increased. It increased during the years of 16, 17 and 18, around 10,000, approximately 9 to 10,000 number increased in donation. But then it dipped down during COVID, and again the rise is very slow. So if we just compare 2014, 15 and 23, 24, increase in total donation is 1,805. Now transplant has increased at a respective number with 8,507, because probably we are now more wiser and we are judiciously using our cornea, doing more of lamellar transplants, using glycerine preserved corneas for saving the eyes when we don't have fresh tissues. And the utilization has also increased from 39% to 55.54%. So what is wrong? Why we are not able to create this awareness? Over 39 years, we are creating these awareness programs. So do you think that these awareness talks are just material for self-publicity, posting them on Facebook and WhatsApp, or people pledge to show they support, but not from their heart? Or these programs are just compulsions or obligations during the fortnight? Or I would say that people are insensitive. Whatever we are saying, they don't bother. So what I feel is that we need a change. Probably awareness program is important again for community retrievals, and people will be, if the person is aware, if we do grief counseling, then they readily accept for donation. So what change do we think that there should be during the awareness program? So we have this Center of Medical Humanities at AIIMS Rishikesh, where we are doing a lot of programs addressing a problem with the help of graphic medicines, reflections, theater, art, dance, drama, etc. And there people enjoy also, and they participate and they develop empathy towards these issues. So what we have changed during like the recent past is that we have, instead of giving didactic lectures to the public, we have started doing eye donation role plays. So here you can show various problems, like the medical legal aspect of medical legal case. Here we discuss these problems among the forensic people around the medical fraternity, police and all, and we can show what problems we face during medical legal retrievals. And role plays in the community, in schools, by our nursing staff, our students, they can do a role play, and then we ask anyone from the public to come and replace that blind person and just can tell how he's feeling, so they can become more empathetic towards the issue. Then I searched on Google that how many movies we have on eye or organ donations, as movies have a lot of impact, and nowadays lot of problems are being addressed by these movies. So I could find just these, out of which Fir Zindagi is the only movie on diseased organ donation, but none on eye donation. We have a lot of movies on blindness, but not addressing on these donations. So I think we can motivate the theater and all these people to make more movies on these issues. Then we do a lot of programs. This is one of the program where we did Love Your Eyes during the last year's fortnight, and we asked every person to send us a photograph addressing the eye only. And then we discussed about the issues, how important is eye for them, and then what happens to people who are blind. So doing it in a reverse order probably would make them more empathetic. Then another important point is that we can make our patients who have undergone transplant as a brand ambassador for eye donation. So once a patient who gains vision, we can call them in these programs and they can address the public that how they used to feel when they were blind and now how their life has changed. So this can have a huge impact on the public. Then another thing is that we have to promote grief counseling, because now we have a lot of publications addressing this thing, that grief counseling will increase the donation, and hospital cornea retrieval program increases the good quality tissues. So I think we all all the eye banks, they face problems with recruiting counselors, grief counselors. So government HR policies should support the salaries for grief counseling. We know that there are, but I don't think a lot of eye bank get support for grief counseling from the government or the institutions itself, because they are not aware. They think that doctors can go and counsel the families. And the last thing which I want to say is that religious leaders should come forward and promote these awareness, which is still lacking in our community. So I think these are the changes we should make during during these awareness programs, which can increase the impact of eye donation awareness in the community. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Neeti. That was truly an insightful talk, and speaks of your deep, experience with these things, especially using role plays and such innovative techniques for increasing awareness always helps. If may I ask any of our panelists to if they have any additions or their own innovative ways of increasing eye donation?
So,
yeah.
Dr. Parihar is there. I think if he can dwell
Yeah,
upon.
if you, sir, can tell, yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
I think you continue. I'm enjoying comments.
So, sorry, sir, we couldn't hear what you said.
Yeah, please repeat.
So we were just saying that in your experience, what are the other innovative ways or some ways to reach the increased awareness? Do you think, using a local language or some role play, like how Dr. Neeti was showing, those things help,
Yes,
or
yes,
any other
definitely. It
ways?
is you have to, if you want to catch the masses. After all, the eye donation campaign is not restricted to the only metro cities and the big institutions. We have to go to the mass. And if you want to go, you have to have the language. Language should not be barrier, and connectivity with the local, regional languages, newspapers, media, and awareness campaign with the every area will have some role model. Every area has a role model, so you have to identify them and push them. Unless until there are so many societies and uh, groups are engaged with this, we cannot achieve our target of getting 2 lakhs model. So Lions is doing good job, and like this Marwadi Samaj, they are taking a lot
Yes.
of this thing. Jainis, Buddhists, their societies, they are very particular in promoting this. So everywhere, wherever it is possible, we must approach. If you are in Andhra, you have to have the Telugu-based literature. And the rural, catching the issue should be the campaign, and the caption should link with the local. I remember, I know one of the girl in the Trivandrum. She is very active. She is now class 12. And last 4 years, she has been promoting banking everywhere by making these sketches and photographs, seminars, reaching to the police people, constables, reaching to the other farmers, fishers, etc. So it is always better to have a mass activities and approach to each and every section of the society.
Thank you so much, sir.
I feel that awareness can be increased because it's just an observation and purely anecdotal when we were felicitating families who are donor families and in our institute, both for organ donors as well as cornea donors. You would realize that there is a wide gap. Wide gap means it is generally the middle socioeconomic class or the lower socioeconomic class who gets motivated to donate, but never very few people were there from the upper class. So I think when you, or maybe because it was AIMS, it's a government organization, and that is the kind of patient cohort we get. And when we do hospital cornea retrieval program and we actually counsel them, then, that is the strata of the patients. But I think it has to percolate also to the upper class of the society, and also to at all levels. And I think it will be most effective if it is put into our school syllabus so that the students are aware of it, because the students can then would know about it and then can motivate their own family members, especially for their grandparents, if their parents forget or otherwise. But I think in school programs, this should be included in the curriculum.
Thank you so much, ma'am. And now I would like to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Hida Masheen. Dr. Hida is the Chair, Global Alliance of Eye Bank Associations, and she heads the Lions Eye Donation Services Australia. Due to the time difference, she is not able to join us in person, but we will have her recorded talk. Sunilji, if you can play.
Today, I'm providing a snapshot of 3 different studies which collectively support the notion of improving awareness of corneal export practice, and there's no conflict of interest in this presentation. I'm doing this because I want to remove misconceptions in the public, such as you shouldn't be exporting because there's people who need the tissue here, or perhaps that exporting is illegal or black market or automatically associated with profiting. I want to remove that so that we can improve our transparency and remain trust with our donors. First of all, the first project that I did was sector interviews, and we interviewed 92 sector members from around the world and sent them and analysed their response. Huge piece of work, but specifically we asked these particular interviewees what the current donor consent and export practices were, if any at all. And we found that globally, regionally, nationally, and even locally, there was no consistency. And in fact, in most cases, there was no such consent or even informed information being provided to donors about the export process at all. Regardless of current standards, we did ask our participants whether or not donors should be consented or at least informed. Of our 92 participants, 72 provided a response, 56 of which said yes. They did, however, draw the line at directed decision-making because donor-directed decision-making isn't extended to other areas of eye care or donation. Secondly, we conducted a public survey with the Australian public. We surveyed 1,044 participants. Again, a huge study, but specifically for today's presentation, we found that donors did want to know about exporting on the public available websites. They wanted a tick box on the donor registry to indicate that they would be willing to share overseas. They did want to know face-to-face and also at the consent process. They did, however, indicate that they wanted the members of the profession to make decisions about directed donation and wanted to do so both transparently and ethically and in an organised manner. Thirdly, we did a study in 2020 where we reviewed publicly available websites of eye bank and tissue bank and agencies involved in the movement of tissue internationally. From those that were publicly available on the server Google, we ended up with 79 publicly available websites from 9 nations. Collectively, we found that only 16 explicitly said that they exported tissue, 17 implied by saying that they were engaged in international activity, but 46, which was majority, didn't even mention it at all. We did find that not one of the websites indicated how they made their decision on exporting, for example, to which country or in which manner, or whether or not they engaged third parties. And finally, there was nothing to indicate that donors were consented for export at all. We found that there was an inadequate amount of information on the sector websites currently to provide the members of the public with sufficient information. So collectively, our recommendations from our studies are that donors should be consented or at least informed that their donation will be moved. There needs to be an improvement of publicly available information, and the sector must work preferably nationally, but also at the local level to be more transparent about their activities. For your reference, since our studies, things have been implemented here in Australia, both at the eBands and at my local eye bank in Melbourne, where we now provide information on our public websites to indicate that we do export. Additionally, also on our local eye bank, we also have the information on our consent form as well, both for transplant and research to say it will be moved overseas. I'd like to thank my co-authors and my funding bodies, the NHMRC and the Lions Eye Bank in Perth. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Hida, for sharing the presentation. What is the view of the panel regarding the corneal export practices? In India, it's not allowed, but if someone wants to share.
So I think in India, it is not allowed at all. And I think rightfully so, because we are not able to cater to our own needs. Even for that matter, if you do transplantation for the foreign nationals, for that, in some of the states, you have to take permission. Like, for instance, in Delhi, only when green flag is given by 2 or 3 institutions, which are government organizations, and if they don't have a waiting list, is the tissue allowed to move to another state, or is the tissue used for foreign national? Otherwise, it cannot be used. This
Even
is
in
a
Maharashtra, it's the same.
same. So this is a program of, this is a problem of plenty where they have and they have to move the tissues. But for us, that doesn't happen. Sir, you would like to comment on this?
Yeah, no, I was just saying that it's an interesting thing, this their move towards transparency for eye banks which export tissues, and her research on the 79 websites was quite eye-opening, because in India we do receive tissue from outside. There are eye surgeons who are receiving tissues from outside of India as well. So it would be interesting to if you're receiving a fair amount of tissue, to push the donor eye banks to be as transparent as Australia wants to be. That would be a good way forward for the foreign eye banks which are supplying tissues to India as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. We'll move to the next speaker now. Dr. Sharon.
Our next speaker is Dr. Namrata Sharma, who is, of course, the professor of ophthalmology at RP Center, AIMS, and needs no introduction. She's also the chairperson of the scientific committee of AIOS and the president of the Cornea Society of India. Over to you, ma'am, for your talk.
So thank you, Sharon, and I would like to thank Sharon and Rakhi for coordinating this wonderful webinar. I would be talking on an important aspect, and that is eye banking and advocacy. Although the government helps us a lot in the practices of eye banking, but I think there is still a lot more to do. So India was the first country to launch the National Program for Control of Blindness in 76, and with the goal of reducing blindness prevalence to 0.3% by the year 2020. And there is a significant evidence on the magnitude of blindness and visual impairment through large population-based surveys. Now, if we look at the blindness data, corneal blindness is the second commonest cause of blindness in our country. And in the age group 0 to 50 years, it is the commonest cause of blindness in our country. And that is why it becomes important, because in the younger age group or the younger population, it is the major cause of blindness in our country. Now, if we look at worldwide, there is availability of law related to cornea donation. The availability of law related to cornea donation is there in all the Southeast Asian countries, which include as following, like India, Bangladesh, Nepal, Sri Lanka, Thailand, Timor, Indonesia, Bhutan, Myanmar, Maldives, and Democratic People's Republic of Korea. And if we look at the various key issues adopted by these select countries, I think the most important of them would be that opt-in or opt-out policy. Because in some of the countries, what happens is that people do not have to, or the next of the kin doesn't have to give consent, but it is presumed that this consent is already there. So they just have to opt out of it. And so opt-in consent is already there, like in United Kingdom and like in United States of America. In India also it is there, but the problem is that the body becomes the property of the family, and if the family does not consent, then we cannot take the eyes. Now, as far as the registry is concerned, I think this is where India is lacking, because definite registry is there in Spain, United Kingdom, USA, and even in Australia, from which we all learn, but national corneal registry in India is very much lacking. As far as the eye donation law is there, it is there in almost all the countries. Access to the medical records before the consent is also there in most of the countries, and so is the non-physician recovery, which means that technicians are allowed. So this was a huge change which happened in the Gazette of India a few years ago, where they allowed the technicians to retrieve the eyes apart from the doctors or the physicians who were earlier allowed. And of course, the processing fees, which is important in India, this processing fees has become legalized, which means that this can be charged, especially from the patient who's being on whom the corneal transplantation is being done. So the policy changes favoring the cornea donation in India is the mandatory death notification. That is, all the death which takes place in the hospital are mandatory and notified to the nearest eye bank for the eye donation counseling. As per the required request law, where typically it mandates that hospital utilize the accepted medical standards in articulating policies for identification of potential organ donors. Now, again, the policy change which did favor cornea donation in India is the first person consent. So now the family members, it has the people who could actually give consent has been expanded, and additional witness or family consent is not required in order to be a donor. And I think if this first person consent is taken as a consent, then a lot of things in India can also change. Then access to trauma centers, mortuaries, and mandatory HCRP at large or medium mortality hospital is something which should happen across all hospitals, which actually does not happen, and especially for the unnatural deaths. And if it does happen again, then our collections can go up. Telephonic consent is something which we should also be allowed and should be given a legal status, so that once anybody gives the telephonic consent, the eyes may be retrieved. Of course, all this would require the change of the law, which as of now is not there, but I'm sure if we do fight for it, this will happen. Then cost coverage of the cornea donation, which is the major hurdle in the professional development of the eye banks, is the issue of the reimbursement of all the expenses. And donation from the philanthropist and the grant from the government, they are generally not sufficient to run the eye bank and making it self-sustainable. So if the cost coverage is legalized in the form of cornea processing fees, this will surely enhance the standard of eye banking. This is there partly, but not completely, and should be done in a more complete manner. Then I think at the level of the Eye Bank Association of India and the Cornea Society of India, as well as ISCRIS, what we should do is the donor registry, the registries for the corneal transplant, and also the donor registries which should be maintained. The donor registries are maintained, I think, more for the organ donations, and they are done quite well by NOTO at the level of Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. But regrettably not for the corneal donors as well it is done for the organ donors. And I think the corneal donors or the people who pledge is maintained more or less by the eye banks. But it is important that these pledges that get converted into transplants, and this can only happen if if we become more liberal in the especially the consenting part. Now, the policy changes again, which favor the cornea donation, is like I said, a national registry should be there, a national wait list registry should be there. Each of the eye banks nowadays, as well as each of the hospital, maintains its own waiting list as per the geographical location. So in some of the eye banks or some of the hospitals, the tissue is going to be excess, but in the others it is deficient. So what we need to actually do is move the tissue from the area where it is surplus to the area where the tissue is deficient. Then the issue of tapping into the opportunity provided by the pledged organ donor is very again important, because this did happen in some of the states where in the central motor vehicle rule in 2018 did try to mandate the capture of this information and indicating it on the driving license. So this is there for the organ donor. Almost all the driving license would have it, but I think it is not there for the cornea donors. And cornea donors are by far much more as compared to the organ donors. And again, this is something which should be looked into. I think Aadhaar card is one of the most frequently used document for identification for various purposes, and this can de facto become the national donor registry without having to link it to any other registry as such, and you don't have to go specially to register yourself as a donor. the information about the intent of a donor will flow to the point where the knowledge is actually useful about it. Then, like I said, some of the states like Rajasthan, there is an organ donor logo. Even in Delhi, there is an organ donor logo. And this is something which is required. But separately, some people may not want to donate the organs, but may want to donate the corneas. So I think that is also which can be taken up separately. Then we did, during the COVID time, publish this, that is the policy framework for advancing eye banking and corneal transplantation. And most of the points that I did discuss are mentioned in this article, which was published by Indian Journal of Ophthalmology. Then there are advocacy tools and tactics which can be applied, and these could be in the form of flyers, brochures, and digital content, which can provide concise information that can be easily distributed to raise awareness about eye donation and eye banking. And this content should include as to the benefits of eye donation, how to become a donor, benefits of corneal transplantation, and I think more importantly, the success stories, because the success stories of the recipients do motivate the general population to donate their eyes. And we've seen several of the success stories. Only thing is they have to be put together and brought in front of the public. Distribution is important of this material at hospitals, clinics, community centers during public events, and digital versions can be shared via email, websites, and social media platforms. Now, the key factors for successful advocacy are generation of evidence, broad advocacy platform, credible eye care leadership, engagement with the policy leaders, which I think is most important, aligned with the health and development agenda, and media strategy, as well as brand ambassadors, which we require. Of course, in order to influence the policymakers, it is important to do high quality research and to generate data so that it becomes more meaningful when you ask for funds or when you ask for help in terms of logistics or in terms of human resource or even infrastructure. So this helps to formulate policies by the policymakers, and it is important to influence them because ultimately in such cases, such as cornea donation, eye donation, or for that matter, organ donation, whatever is noted in the law or in the gazette becomes important. So it is important to engage these policymakers routinely, flexibly, and in a more humble way so that they relent to our demands. Again, it is important to build relationship with these policymakers and be an entrepreneurial or find someone who is. I think INTOT is a superb example of this, and reflect continuously so that you can engage and do what you want and do what is actually working. So to conclude, the potential of cornea donation and transplantation, I think, is yet not been optimized. We may be only at about 10 to 20% of what we can do, and we need to scale it further. The control measures through policy exist, but they need enhancement through policy changes and through policymakers. And I think more importantly for this, we need to generate data and do good quality research. Again, to combat the problem of corneal blindness in India, we need to fast track the policy changes, and well-designed governance framework needs to be put in place to coordinate individual national efforts in matching supply with the demand. So the more we can collect together, the stronger we are and the stronger message we can give to the government, the more people we have on board together. Thank you very much for your time and attention.
Thank you, ma'am. As always, a very excellent presentation and some beautiful points brought out by you. As you were showing in your PPT about advocacy by policy change, and also if we can coordinate with celebrities or people who have a voice with the audience, is there any particular way that you go about, or if any of our panelists say to reach out to celebrities, because they're not always easier to do? Is it by known, or is there a common way to reach out? And are they, usually open to such things?
So I think they are open to such things. We can, but reaching out to them is a little challenging. As far as the celebrities are concerned, but I think the policymakers we can still reach out to, the government we can still reach out to. The problem is that they are not, I mean, they may or may not be very effective, or they may or may not take actions. But having said this, in the current gazette, that the changes were brought about through the efforts of several of our past past leaders, especially in I-Bank Association of India, Dr. Quresh Muscati, Dr. Jaswant Mehta ji, and several others who did actually, Dr. Radhika Tandon, who did actually bring about a change in the sense that two very important changes. One is that the people who could consent, that pool was expanded from the immediate family members to the less immediate family members in the form of grandparents and grandchildren. And second important thing was that technician was allowed to retrieve the eye apart from the physician. I think that has made a difference to our collections. But like I said, we are still not there. We are only at the level of 10 to 20%. So Dr. Muscati is there. Would you like to comment on this? And then maybe you can tell us about the celebrities, if it is how
no, celebrities is hit and miss. You see, you have one Aishwarya Rai 20 years ago talking about it, and then she's no longer a celebrity as of now. So you need to keep updating, keep getting the newer celebrities. But what I feel is that just like we promote Coke or Pepsi in the country with a sustained media campaign which is paid for, we need to have people who are willing to sponsor a paid media campaign, whether it is through print media, TV ads, whether it is celebrities. Let the media house decide, depending on the budget that we can get from some sponsors. So I see Nikhil smiling. I'm happy to see his smile is still there. So Nikhil, I wasn't referring only to you, but people like you, people like that who can sustain a media campaign at least for a length of time. So if it hits that critical mass, then everything else becomes self-sustaining. The other things will then flow. So to get that critical mass, I think we need to spend a large amount of money on a media campaign, and AIOS can be part of the sponsorship. I mean, there is no reason why we can't use the funds that we have for something like this.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Nikhil, what would you want to say about the, how we can, I'm sure you would have also for your eye donation pledges program that you run. So you've been running so effectively, at least I know for the past couple of years, or maybe even longer. I have been following for last 2 years, but I'm sure, I'm sure you'll be telling us in your talk about your program also on eye donation pledges.
Yeah, I think it needs to be we need to create a cultural change of donation in the country, starting from school kids, right to senior citizens. And I think, as Dr. Muscati rightly said, there needs to be a continuous campaign with paid media, with influencers, medical influencers, kind of creating that change for us. I think right now, I think the efforts that we are taking are okay, but I don't think it's good enough. It will not meet the requirements moving forward. So definitely there needs to be a change. And I think change will come by having perennial campaigns, which will be running
All through the year,
365 days in a year.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Rakhi.
Move to the next talk.
Move to the next one. Yeah.
I'll introduce our next speaker, Dr. Quresh Muscati, sir. Sir is the past president for AIOS, past president for Cornea Society of India. He is also the past president for Bombay Ophthalmic Association. He's received the Lifetime Achievement Award from ISCRIS, and he is also the trustee and advisor for EBCRC, which is one of the largest eye bank in Maharashtra. Sir is going to talk about how to involve social organizations like Rotary and Lions in the eye donation movement. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. So my talk is basically on how we need to involve not only social organizations, but family physicians to promote our cause of eye donation. So let's start with the family physician. What role can the family physician? So just imagine that you're sitting with your favorite family physician and you're chatting with him. All of us have no family physicians. So what do we talk to them about? Ask them to, first of all, of course, we assume that they know the basics of iBanking, who can donate, who cannot donate. That information, of course, you give them. And then tell them, can you promote it with posters in your waiting room? Then look for their reaction to see if they seem to be a little more interested. Then those who are asking you more questions about the procedure, it shows that those family physicians are a little more interested. In that case, I would have the pamphlets which are prepared by the iBank, and most iBanks have these on myths and facts about eye donation, ready to give them. Give him 100 pamphlets. Don't flood him with thousands. Just give him 100 and tell him, sir, when it gets over, let us know. So there is a continuous feedback with him. It's not give it and forget it, because you give him 1,000 pamphlets, he leaves it in his waiting room. It is forgotten there. It is kept in some corner. Somebody while dusting the waiting room takes it and throws it in the kachra ka dabba, and that's forgotten. So we need to have a continuous rapport. So give a small number, then call them up after 15 days. Sir, is it over? Have people picked it up? Do you want more? So that he gets constantly reminded that those pamphlets are still around. So explain that you can keep this, you can keep posters in the waiting room, you can keep pamphlets in the waiting room. Suppose you find that a family physician whom you're talking to is even more keen, then yes, I tell him that why don't you come and undergo training? We even train technicians who are 12th standard pass. So you can also get trained, or if you got staff with you, your compounder or whatever, we'd be happy to train them and we'll certify them. The iBank can now certify after this, so they get a certificate saying they're trained for eye donation work, they're trained for even enucleation, so that they can, you see what happens is, previously when technicians were not allowed, when it was only family physicians, we used to train family physicians to remove the eyeballs. But family physicians hated leaving their busy practice. They're much busier than ophthalmologists. And to leave practice, say 7 o'clock in the evening, which is peak consulting hours, they have about 50 patients waiting for them to go and attend an iBank call in somebody's home, which is half an hour away. It means a loss of 2 hours of consulting time, and we don't have the money to pay for this, and we don't pay for these services. So I tell him, if you are interested, you're most welcome to come and learn eye donation, the excision, enucleations, but you could send your assistants, your technicians, and you could use them as well. I also tell them that if you want, we'll train your staff in grief counseling. So grief counseling, again, we've come a long way. We've now got professional grief counselors, and it doesn't take long to educate someone on how to be a grief counselor. So both grief counseling and how to enucleate eyes or in situ corneoscleral excision, all these things can be explained, but go easy. Don't flood the family physician with everything. Look at his level of interest or build his interest little by little. Then I tell the family physician that as a family physician, if you can't do anything, it doesn't matter. You're an individual also. So why don't you talk to friends whenever you can? You go to a party, you veer the conversation towards eye donation, sensitize people about eye donation, how easy it is. And actually, I've been doing this in my Rotary and in the parties that I attend where there are non-medicals. Somehow we get the topic to veer around donations, eye donations, organ donations, and then I chat about it. So if I can do it, any family physician can do the same. Then I tell them, you put up posters in your building. If you're living in, like in Mumbai, most of us live in apartments, matchbox size flats. So you can put up, there's a lot of space in your building society, on the wall, in the notice board. You can send pamphlets to your neighbors. You don't have to say anything. But most importantly, if a death occurs in the neighborhood, you can just mention eye donation to the grieving relatives. And just you offer to call the iBank and arrange the whole thing. So I tell them how easy it is. I give them the iBank numbers, that if somebody dies in your building, just talk to the relatives. They won't say no if you ask them. Just call the iBank and it's so easy to arrange. What about people we know who are members of Rotary and Lions? So I tell them, let's organize a club visit to the iBank. See, all these Rotary Lions are always looking for unusual things. They have, Rotary has weekly meetings. Lions clubs have meetings once a month. at a set hotel or a restaurant or something. That's where they meet, and it becomes quite boring after some time. So they look for activities like this. So an activity which doesn't cost much is a club visit to the iBank. So let the whole club means hardly 20, 30 people will come. But let them all come. So the iBank, the iBank manager shows them around, answers any questions, gives them a small talk. It becomes so easy for them to donate money right there and then, because they see how wonderful work they're doing. Our iBank manager then gives them that if you want to donate even 10 rupees or 20 rupees, here's the box, you can donate it. If you like, this is the amount that it costs to sponsor one or more corneal transplant surgeries for the poor. So we are tied up with the government and hospitals where it doesn't cost much more than 1,000 rupees or so because we give the cornea for next to nothing, and only the viscoelastic or some small expenses are there. So they can sponsor some transplant surgeries and give sight to the poor. And we tell them, would you like to take some pledge cards back home with you? And don't send the pledge cards back to us. Just sign it and keep it in a prominent place in your house so that the family members will know. So this, if you know members of Rotary Alliance, arrange a club visit to the iBank. It becomes very useful. What more can the Rotary Lions Club? So if you find a good Rotary president or Lions president who seems interested, I tell them then to promote the HCRP. You see, when we go to large public hospitals, they feel somehow that we have a vested interest. You people want to take the eyeballs and you want to sell it. All sorts of thoughts come to mind. Why should we help you type of thing? But if a Rotary or a Lions Club, which already has a credibility factor in society, they go and meet the person in charge, the director in charge of a large hospital, and tell them, sir, would you allow us to promote the HCRP in your hospital? We can arrange talks for your nursing staff on grief counseling. We can arrange talks for your doctors, little at a time. We know your doctors are busy, but 2 or 4 of them at a time, we can just sensitize them. Can you allow us to put posters of eye donation outside the ICU or wherever you allow? If the director of the hospital is more cooperative, then we tell them, give them pamphlets prepared, the same pamphlets. If even more cooperative, again, if the Lions and Rotary can be a liaison, then our iBank staff can train the nursing and medical staff on grief counseling. So the Rotary and Lions can be the in-betweens, and the credibility factor can be used by us to promote HCRP, to promote eye donation. Most important again for Rotary and Lions is the follow-up visits, because in one shot we have tried this. So I'm giving you from example that the director says yes to them for everything. They give the pamphlets, they give the posters, and if you visit it after 3 months, no pamphlets are there, no posters are there. The wall was painted, the poster was removed, and nothing happened after that. So most important is for the Rotary Club to adopt a hospital, as it were. So keep following up visits to the same hospital. Check whether posters are still up. Are they torn? Do you need more posters? Do you have more pamphlets? Do you need more? Have you got new staff now in the ICU? Can we train them as well? And if there are any teething problems, they can be sorted out. If the director says, look, patients are objecting to the fact that the posters are there or whatever, then say, okay, we'll move them somewhere else, something like that. So a follow-up, because that medical director of the hospital shouldn't feel that these Rotarians visited once and have left it, or it's a useless program. And Rotary Alliance is a fly-by-night operator, so it gives them also a bad name. So continuous follow-up with gentle persuasion works wonders, actually. Of course, individual members can talk to friends, just like as I told you about family physicians putting up posters. Death occurs, all this, what I told you about family physicians, individual Rotarians and Lions can also do so. I would urge all of us as eye surgeons to give talks in the Rotary and Lions clubs. They'll welcome speakers always, and put these points about what all they can do. They can also distribute pledge cards, and don't return the pledge cards to the bank. I tell them to put the pledge cards such that all the family members can see them, frame it in a prominent place. So these are some of the ways in which I think we should engage with family physicians and social organizations like Rotary, Lions. Their ladies wing is there, the Inner Wheel and the Lionesses and things like that, so that we involve the general public in being our brand ambassadors, as it were, to increase and enhance our eye donations. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank
you.
you. Go ahead. Sorry, Neha. Thank you.
No worries. I just want to say one thing. As an immediate past president of one of the Rotary clubs in Jaipur, which is focused on organ donation, I definitely feel that if we involve the Rotary Club and the Lions Club with the activities like taking them to the eye bank and talking about the activities and also involving them in the awareness activities, because most of these Rotary Club members are either working at some big organizations or they have their own businesses. So it's not only them. If you work with them, it's the different kind of community you engage with, which is definitely useful. Last year itself, with the club members, we were able to get 5 eye donations. Actual eye donations happened because of the efforts of the Rotary members once they realize that how important it is. So it's definitely, it's a fruitful effort for sure. Any other comments from the panel? If there is no comment, then we can move to the next speaker. Dr. Sharon, if you can introduce.
As of now, I am aware that Mohita Sharma is the current president in, I think, Gurugram or somewhere. And Namrata, if you're distantly related to her, perhaps you can put in a word there. Okay, let's go on.
Thank you, sir. Our next speaker is Dr. Manisha Acharya, who is the Director of Cornea Services and the Eye Banking Service at Dr. Shroff Charity Eye Center at Delhi. She has received the BMJ Award for Quality and has even co-authored a book on eye banking. Welcome, Dr. Manisha, and over to you for your talk today.
Thank you so much. And at the outset, I would like to thank the Eye Bank Association of India as well as the AIOS for organizing this very, I would say, a very pertinent webinar on eye banking. And I will be discussing the challenges in eye banking and quality assurance. I think there are a lot of challenges when it comes to the awareness part and getting the tissue actually to the eye bank. But what happens once the tissue is in the eye bank, and how the eye bank per se, with some measures, improve the utilization of the tissues, and when they've already, the most important and the difficult part is getting a call or getting the consent. But what happens after that? So we've already discussed that blindness is a very major public health problem in the country. And corneal diseases is one of the second causes of the vision loss in the country after cataract. In India, we know there are millions of people who are waiting for, they have vision less than 6/60 and in at least one of the eye due to corneal diseases. So we know that we need 25,000 corneal blindness ads every year. And there is about 1 million, they have bilateral involvement. So the need is great. Now, just going up to what the EBAI registry tells us, that there are 760 eye banks and eye donation centers which are there. And in the last financial year, around 50,000 corneas were collected through eye donation in India, and only 27,394 could be utilized for sight restoring surgeries, which means the utilization rate is around 55% when it comes to pan-India utilization, and it is one of the good ones because previously it was around 40%. Sorry. Eye banking has a long and impressive history, having enabled millions of vision restoring surgeries. And if we look at the year-wise collection going up in most of the eye banks, we know it's not just all about numbers. And the last decade has seen eye banking reinventing it and getting transformed, where quality is the foremost guiding principle. So we know it's not all about numbers anymore. Maintenance of integrated quality assurance program in the eye bank has become mandatory. If you look at this, I think Dr. Muscati and most of us who have been with the eye bank for a long time, traditional eye banking had everything right from being the medical director to manager, even counseling the patient, going for the harvest, and then distributing, calling the patient, and doing the transplant. It was all the doctor which was doing. And this used to be a very common sight with the medical directors who used to think that they can manage eye banking on their own. And it has changed now. So what we look at eye banking today is that it's only at the apex where the medical director and the surgeon who's doing corneal transplantation, they're doctors. All the other cadres are now professional cadres, and they take care of the respective job, be it the eye bank manager, be it the counselor in eye donation counselor being there, the recovery technician, evaluation technician, distribution coordinator, and now there is a post for QA manager in most of the big eye banks as well, which may or may not be just the eye bank manager, but separately hold this post. So committed eye banking is important. Every eye bank, to start the quality culture, must have a good vision and a mission to what they want to do, which may be like we have with us to be a sustainable community eye bank with innovation and best practices in eye banking. And the mission is to make a lasting impact on corneal blindness, providing quality eye banking services. If you look at this holistic view of what the eye bank is supposed to do, apart from the major activities of the eye bank, quality assurance now becomes an important pillar of the eye bank. Why is quality important? It's important for equity, for timeliness, effectiveness, the efficiency of the eye bank as well as the people employed in the eye bank, the safe utilization of tissue, and also the most important is infection control. We all dread endophthalmitis when it comes to a tissue being transplanted on a patient. So nothing happens in a day. There are proper steps wherein quality in the eye banks can be established. The first and the foremost being gap analysis. The first thing is to find out what actually is missing in the eye bank in the current practices, and then prepare policy and processes, update the protocols. And infrastructure is important for maintaining a good quality, having a good quality eye bank, implementation of the protocols, then monitoring what you have already planned as policy and processes, indicators, audits, incident management, and CAPA, which is corrective and preventive action if any incident has happened. So we did have the structured QA program in a phased manner in our eye bank, and that's how it is. It has to start in a phased manner. The first important thing being, is to abide by the law of land. And you have to have all the necessary permissions and the certificates which are required and be updated with them. The most important is to prepare a good SOP. More than the preparation, what is more important is to implement the SOP which is there. So SOP should be in compliance with regulatory requirements, most commonly the NPCB guidelines for India. And it has to be prepared by the focus group and discussed and reviewed by all stakeholders. So it's better to write these SOPs in very common language and not try to make it so unreadable for the technicians and the counselors. So it is good to make your counselors and the technicians sit and discuss the SOP and write in only what can be followed so that this can be taught like the Bible for the eye bankers. QA has to be made a formal activity and enmeshed with the roles and responsibilities of all eye bank staff. And you have to do it for years to get it enmeshed in your work culture of the eye bank. A lot of trainings do happen. Basic infrastructure is important. And now most of the eye banks are equipped with these infrastructure. When we started in eye banking, we know that having a specular used to be a big thing, and getting a good refrigerator or a laboratory refrigerator was like a luxury for us. But now most of the eye banks do start with this basic infrastructure which is there in them. Then came this universally accepted indicators of quality assurance in the eye bank, and that's what is there. These are the 5 major roles of the eye bank, which starts in the form of donor acquisition, tissue harvest and preservation, evaluation, and distribution. And it is this actually the reference model, or what you can say, these 4 useful pointers where you have to monitor quality. And if you're monitoring in these 4 checkpoints, then the tissue which goes out of the eye bank, you will be very confident that it's a very good tissue you are distributing for the surgeon. So there are specific pointers on that. Now, if we come at the quality, we had this paper out which addressed the necessity for quality indicators specific to the eye banks by identifying, defining, measuring, and proving the efficiency of these 4 quality indicators. And these 4 indicators actually had 2 processes. One was the result quality and the process quality. And these outcome indicators for the eye bank we have to understand the primary output is the cornea for the transplants, and that's what we call as how much it was utilized. And surgeons are treated as the end users from the eye bank perspectives. And the key measure for quality of tissue is positive impact on the surgical outcome. So one of the most important quality indicator remains the adverse reaction. So when we come to the process quality, that is the result quality we are talking about. But when we come to process quality, the discard rate, the protocol deviation rate, that is number of incidents or deviations in the SOP. Whenever you're doing an audit, it is caught up, that becomes the protocol deviation rate. So we have to understand that there are some leading indicators where, and all these three would come up, like the adverse reaction rate, the discard rate, and the protocol deviation rate. They provide advanced information as to the efficacy of the quality assurance which is in place in the eye bank or not. And compliance rate, that is like a trailing indicator. It is taken as a trailing indicator, which indicates how much it has been, quality assurance has been achieved after a specific time. So we have it is also a parameter on the checklist, and it has to be like how much was the compliance for particular very important protocols which were there in the eye bank. So this is the definition, the purpose and calculation, and how do you do it. And anybody interested, we can share the article as well, which we've been now doing it very constantly in our eye bank. Audits are very, very important. How much your process may be there. If you do not audit or monitor, things don't actually materialize, or they lead to a result. So indicators as well as audits. And that's what is monitoring for any quality assurance program to go on. With this, we also did one of the studies wherein we studied the impact of quality assurance on utilization of corneal tissues in a community eye bank of ours. And basic here, the purpose of the study was to determine the linkage between the quality assurance program and increase in the utilization of the donor corneas at a community eye bank. The study indicators had quality assurance program which improves the utilization rate or the of the recovered corneas. And it actually concluded that in countries with shortage of donor corneas, increasing utilization of the recovered tissue can lead to increase in total number of corneal transplants. And implementation of QAP at an eye bank can be the means for achieving this outcome. So we, on one hand, there is awareness drive which has to go on, which is very, very important, and number of consents have to improve. But on the second important way, where we as doctors and we as eye bankers can contribute, is to have good quality assurance program in the eye bank so that the utilization rate improves. So we, in this study, what we did, there were 4 major categories which lead to non-utilization of the recovered tissue, which was in the form of tissue quality, seropositive, and blood samples could not be collected, and also some medical donor records which did not match, and we could not utilize the tissue. So we did this before the implementation, and one after we had started, we had a good processes in place, and SOP changed and implemented them. So if you look at this, the number of cornea recovered to the number of cornea transplanted, with the years, it started to improve. And pre-intervention and post-intervention, it did show an important improvement in the utilization rate of this. And these were the 4, as I was saying, that pre-intervention years, it was definitely much higher. The issues for blood samples, the medical history, seropositive and tissue quality. And it started to stabilize after that, and we are continuing with that. The other important issue which always comes is you have a capacity building to induction of trained manpower. Have a good training system in your eye bank, or have a tie-up with an eye bank which has a good training system. Build up your good the manpower. Trained manpower are the biggest assets you can think of. And implementation is by training. We all know we just need to train on SOPs. Writing everything will not work. It has to be percolated down to the people who are actually executing the jobs. So this is what I say. We have to start by doing the right thing, right way, right away. So train your staff properly, and they will deliver good results. Do the trainings, monitor, make logs, and make sure that it is appreciated if you are trained and doing a good job in your eye bank. And the impact of quality is very rewarding. The creation of quality culture in an eye bank, it stimulates the efforts for continuous quality improvement. It increases job satisfaction among eye bank staff. It improves the reputation among various stakeholders, ensures patient safety, and also prepares for unprecedented events like COVID pandemic. So when it came up in our eye bank, we felt that we had the SOP. We could immediately modify the SOP because the staff was already well aware how much SOP meant to us. With our online, we could immediately go for PPEs, train them and go into the field as early as possible and be the first eye bank in North India to start eye banking services. And this is the book which we had written, and it has all the quality parameters and all the knowledge about eye banking, which we have tried to put it in a book and by EBA. Not just that, even in the numbers, it improves. Once you have the quality culture set, a good SOP working, the numbers also make an improvement, because initially you do it for your utilization and other things. Then you start having your SOPs of how to counsel the patient, what is the right way of doing it, and you start and you learn, and it's something like that. The success breeds success, and the numbers also improve. And the most important right now, the eye bank also needs to meet the challenge of accreditation. Any eye hospital needs an NABH accreditation, and eye bank is an important part of that. And sometimes it also brings you awards, and which becomes a big encouragement to continue this journey forwards. Thank you so much for your attention, and I'm happy to answer anything if there's any confusion.
Thank you, Dr. Manisha. Excellent presentation. Very, very insightful and beautifully shown how quality practices are so important. If any of our panelists, Dr. Quresh, any comments or?
No, I just feel that we have such islands of excellence in the country. That is the unfortunate thing. As Manisha pointed out, we have 760 eye banks. Almost, I mean, I don't know the numbers, but more than 50% are working merely as eye collection centers. They're calling themselves eye banks, but they're just eye donation centers or eye collections as EDCs or something like that. So the challenge for EBI, I see, is to get these, it's great to talk about quality. That's the ideal, but to get it percolated down to the eye bank sitting in Jumri Talaya and get them to follow at least some of these things, that is the need of the hour. And I think what we need to do is from EBI is appoint again on a salary 2 or 3 people whom Manisha can train as quality assurance experts and send them at our cost, at EBI cost, to whichever eye bank wants it, and then gently nudge eye banks to ask for them. So they can spend maybe a week with that eye bank, maybe 15 days or maybe 2 days. I don't know how long it would take. It's not to teach them everything, but just to sensitize them about how important it is to get quality programs in. I think that will go a long way in improving utilization of the corneas.
I think that's a very, very beautifully and valid point, Dr. Maskati, because as we've seen, sometimes, it may be that they don't know, and sometimes there may be a resistance also to learn such things. So if there is an SOP or something which is already existing, then, more people would be, maybe all eye banks would probably reach some sort of an equal plane. And that would be amazing for our country. So
I'll just add to that,
Yes.
Sharon, that it's not easy to change a culture. It's not easy.
Absolutely.
It's very easy to say percolate it down. I remember the resistance we also had in our eye bank when we started.
Yeah.
But sometimes you have to make them the stakeholders. You make your SOP. And I remember I made the 4 technicians sit and told them, write in Hindi what you do. Because I have to say, when we go to that NPCB guidelines, I've read each and every, and I'm saying it, it's in such complex English that most of our technicians will not be able to imbibe that. So I said, these are the basics, whatever you will write, then I will write it again. And then we translated the major part of it in Hindi also, so that they read it, and it become like a mandatory. And I remember 2 years down the line, when one of the technicians came to me and he said, Madam, hamara utilization बढ़ गया. So I was so happy. Finally, they are changing their perspective from just we got the cornea to now that it got utilized. So it has to be a thinking or a thought which has to change and culturally get into the eye.
Lucky we move to the next.
Let's move to our next speaker, Dr. Sunita Chaurasia. She is a consultant, cornea and interior segment, refractive and pediatric services at L.V. Prasad Eye Institute, medical director of the Ramayana International Eye Bank. She received the Achievement Award at the AAO in 2014, and she's going to talk about advances in eye banking, role of pre-prepared DMAC tissues. Welcome, ma'am.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rakhi, for the kind introduction, and thank you everyone for organizing this wonderful seminar. And I guess all talks are very interesting, and I'll move on to my presentation topic, which is on advances in the eye banking and role of pre-prepared DMEC tissue in eye banking. My slides are visible, Rakhi?
Yes, they are visible.
All right. So when we talk of eye banking, the scope of eye banking over the years has been continuously expanding, and this has primarily happened with the evolution of lamellar surgeries. So as we see initially when the DSEC became popular, the eye banks got involved with the pre-cut DSEC tissue, preparing it in the eye bank, and then providing it to the surgeons. Now, when the DMEC was partly replaced by the DMEC surgery, then the eye banks also had to advance with the new technical procedures which were adopted by the surgeons, and then came the importance of preparing the pre-prepared DMEC grafts in the eye bank. So when we talk about pre-prepared DMEC grafts in the eye bank, I think there are three important and pertinent questions which arise. First is the safety and efficacy of the eye bank technician versus the surgeon prepared tissues. We should be comfortable with the technician preparing the tissues. Second important consideration is the cost economics of preparing a DMEC graft in the eye bank. This is certainly a very important issue because we have to invest time, energy, infrastructure, resources into one more specific stage of the procedure which is required in the eye bank. So that is also very important to consider. Thirdly, if we are thinking of adopting the pre-preparing the DMEC graft, what are the best practices and techniques to adopt in pre-prepared DMEC graft in the eye banks? Because there are many ways of preparing the graft, and what is the best practice which will be suitable both for the eye bank as well as the surgeons? These three important questions we have to deal with. Coming to the first question of eye bank technician versus surgeon prepared graft. Now, DMEC graft preparation, we all know, can be a little challenging, even for the surgeons to begin with. So certainly for the technicians also, it will be a little challenging because technicians are not very familiar with the microsurgical procedures. And that is why they need to get familiar with using the microscope as well as a microsurgical steps, which is a requirement of the DMEC graft preparation. That apart, when we look at the overall the adoption of the DMEC graft preparation in the eye banks in various countries and various scenarios, eye bank technicians have acquired tissue preparation skill. Rather, some of the preparation skills and techniques have come from the technicians, especially in the US. So I think there is a reason to believe that the technicians can learn this through repetitive and practice. They can adopt this technique of preparation in a very safe and efficient manner. So looking into the data and literature, so when we compare the eye bank and surgeon prepared graft, DMEC preparation at the eye bank have had similar outcomes compared to the surgeon prepared tissues, as far as some literature which has been showing a similar kind of cell loss also is seen with surgeon versus technician prepared, pre-prepared DMEC graft. So this brings confidence to the eye banking and technicians being involved with the DMEC graft preparation. Moving on to second important question about pre-prepared DMEC graft from the eye bank, the cost, economics, and other considerations. Now, adopting the pre-preparation of the tissue will require additional infrastructure cost, training of the technicians which will be required, and this requires more costing at the eye bank. And this other important thing is that the corneal surgeons who are going to ask for the pre-prepared tissue should perceive a value add to using pre-prepared tissue. Like, let's say, if there is no demand from the surgeons, then the eye bank need not adopt this. Third thing is that the surgeons, when they're asking for the pre-prepared tissue, there should be a certain readiness also to bear the extra cost which will come with the pre-prepared DMEC graft compared to the whole corneoscleral rim from the eye bank. So these are three important considerations so far as cost economics are concerned. Now, when the eye bank thinks of adopting the pre-preparation of the DMEC graft, what are the best practices? What is the best way to adopt? Now, there can be many ways of preparing the DMEC graft. One could be pre-preparing the tissue with a hinge in place, and second could be pre-loading the graft, and there could be several ways of doing this. In pre-stripping the tissue, which could be with the stromal window, with or without marking of the tissue. Now, there's no ideal method because each method has its own advantages and demerits, and simply also because the working conditions of the eye banking and even of the surgeons is sort of variable. So every surgeon may have a different preference with respect to the pre-prepared tissue from the eye bank. Now, when we look into the popularity of pre-prepared DMEC grafts in US versus Indian scenario, most of the eye banks in US provide both pre-prepared, pre-stripped cornea as well as pre-loaded. So the surgeon can choose. But in our context, in our country, presently, the provision of the pre-prepared tissue is in the form of a pre-stripped donor cornea as what we receive in the pre-prepared DSEC pre-cut, which is provided in the Corneal chamber. And there's a stromal window. And some surgeons who do not want the stromal window and prefer to mark under the air bubble, they can put a request accordingly. So this is the way currently it has been adopted in our practice. Now, when the eye bank has to adopt the pre-preparation of grafts in the eye banks, pre-strip versus preloaded. Now, obviously, preloaded seems to be more logical, but there are certain other things which one has to consider. And these three would be something to do with the technician-related factors, eye bank own factors, endothelial viability concerns, and also the surgeon's preferences. Now, when we look at the technician's learning curve for graft preparation, it is far simpler with the pre-stripped tissue compared to the preloaded, because preloaded involves certain extra additional steps, and this may not be always possible in the eye bank scenario. With respect to stripping the Descemet's membrane, the easiest one for the eye bank technicians is a double punch technique where you use trephines and you are able to do the initial, instead of scoring it, you can use a trephine to punch the tissue. And this makes the learning much more easier. However, because you're using two trephines, it might be a little bit more expensive compared to the scoring method of preparation. Endothelial health assessment is very crucial when we are going to adopt this practice in the eye bank. It is important to see that the endothelial viability is good. Now, pre and post DME graft preparation ECD assessment on specular, like what we do in the pre-cut tissue for DSEC, it is still possible, but the assessment for the DME graft preparation using the specular microscopy may have certain limitations. In one study, it showed that it did not change before and after the DME graft preparation, but one needs to understand the endothelial health assessment or viability after the pre-prepared DME graft will have certain limitation, both for the pre-stripped and the preloaded corneas. This is because when we do the pre-stripping, the DM roll is sort of not very firmly adherent to the stroma. So there may be visualization issues. We may not be able to assess the endothelial count very well. And similar thing happens with the preloaded tissue, because the glass in which, or maybe whichever the injector it is loaded, may lead to certain image distortions for a proper specular microscopy imaging. So what is the best way to have endothelial health assessment or viability is by doing the vital dye staining, and this might require images software to quantify the assessment of the endothelial viability in the pre-prepared DME graft. Now, certain times the preparation will happen well advanced in time, just like it happens in pre-prepared DSEC graft. Now, what is the effect of preparation time to the surgery on the endothelial health? Now, the data from the various in vitro and clinical studies has shown that the utilization of, let's say, a free-floating DMEX scroll, which is there in the corneal preservation medium, this has been evaluated up to 2 days with no specific influence on the rebubbling rates and the endothelial cell loss. With the pre-stripping of the donor grafts, it can be used up to 3 days. And with the preloaders, some literature says that instead of 3 days, one can use it even up to 4 days or 96 hours. However, this was one important study which looks into all these factors. And this studied the clinical outcomes of preloaded grafts in a very robust manner. And looking at the data, it shows that there is a little bit of a supremacy of pre-stripping of the donor corneas compared to the preloading. In the preloading, because the DMEC tissue is within the injector and there's not much of circulation of the media, so there's a chance of little higher cell loss with the preloaded tissues compared to the pre-stripped tissues. And this is what the experimental arm of the study showed, that the viability of the endothelial cells was way better with pre-stripped compared to the preloaded, and sort of cell loss was also less with the pre-stripped tissue instead of the preloaded grafts. Now, other factors related to the adoption of the DME graft preparation in the eye banks. If you look at pre-stripped versus preloaded, pre-stripping is technically easier for the surgeons to learn. However, preloaded will be requiring more surgical steps, more steps of the procedure, which may be sort of a little difficult for the eye bank technicians to adopt. Distribution and shipping is for the pre-stripped corneas is sort of similar to the pre-cut DSEC and far easier, whereas the preloaded graft will require specific arrangements, shipping requirements in the form of injectors and tubes. Pre-stripping consumes lesser time in the eye bank, whereas preloading will require extra time of the eye bank technicians. And this will have, pre-stripping will have a lower cost compared to the preloaded, which will make the tissue also more expensive for the surgeon to use. Now, with respect to surgeons' ease and convenience in the OVAs, now pre-stripped graft, there are certain additional steps the surgeon may have to require to prepare, and this will take little longer time compared to the preloaded grafts. However, this is still rational because the graph sizing can be judged intraoperatively when you have the pre-strip cornea. You can size it as per the requirement of the individual eye right at the time of the surgery. There is also a scope, like when we have the stromal window prepared, there's a scope to augment or do the stamp marking immediately prior to surgery compared to the preloaded, where it might get fainter with longer time from the periods from the time of processing. The other thing is that the pre-strip cornea will be demographed, will add some flexibility to location and centration of definition because one can stay and look at which will be the exact area from where the definition should be done, whereas this is not sort of possible with the preloaded graft. Certain inherent issues which may be just specific to the tissue delivery method in pre-strip graft, the stromal window sometimes may have a potential to dislodge from the side. And with the preloaded graft, this graft can sometimes be seen to stick to the walls of the injector or the cannula, and sometimes the graft may dislodge again in the preloaded grafts. And also one demerit of the preloaded tissue is that the cell loss may be slightly more compared to the pre-stripped graft. However, with all these considerations, adoption of the pre-prepared DMEC graft at the eye bank is still a positive move in the eye banking and possibly might help in wider acceptance of the DMEC surgery. Now, this is one data which we collected at our own institute, and this is because in a given day for the surgeon to prepare the tissue was little tedious, and eye bank being within the campus. So this is what we looked at. We see that over the years, the DSEC numbers have been quite stable, is in a similar way compared to various years. But if you look at the 2022, when we started doing the pre-prepared tissue at the eye bank, there is almost like a 6 to 7-fold increase in the pre-prepared tissue, and this data is till March. So overall now, most of these surgeries, almost 100% become pre-prepared because the eye bank technicians are preparing, makes the surgery little easier and reduces the time which is required in the OR. So I think there's a scope for specific situations where we can adopt this practice in several other eye banks. And thank you for your patient listening. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for such an informative session. I think after the DSEC, DMEC is going to be a very fantastic value addition to the iBank services. Any question or comments from the panel? We can move to the next presentation. Dr. Sharon.
Our next speaker for the evening is Dr. Sujata Das, who is a consultant faculty at LV Prasad Eye Hospital at Bhubaneswar and also the head of the LVPI Eye Bank Network. She's, of course, a recipient of several national and international awards and authors of multiple papers and book chapters. Thank you, madam, and welcome. Over to you for your talk.
Thanks, Arun. Good evening. Thanks, AIOS, for coordinating with EBI for this meeting. So, looks like I'll summarize what Manisha, Namrata, and Sunita mentioned. I changed a little bit from yesterday, today, and tomorrow to past, present, and future. So, I don't know which one is past, but I think I'll calculate around 15-20 years ago as a past and current, then again next 10 years, what will be the future. So all of us know the eye bank and cornea surgeon are the link between donor and recipient. The function of eye bank has expanded in last 10-15 years because there is a shift in corneal transplantation, and the contraindication list actually has changed because of lamellar surgery or new diseases has come, and some scientific research has been done. So some are added and some are removed from the list. So what is this changes in eye banking in last 10-15 years? To start with, it was more on collection. Now most of the eye bank, they focus on utilization. The collection may not go up, but the utilization should go up. Or many people, as an indicator like Manisha mentioned, after they maintain quality, the percentage of utilization is increased. And corneal storage solution, again, many of us are using intermediate corneal storage solution. Some even are collecting an intermediate storage solution. And to start with, everybody was thinking processing fee should not be charged. It should be charity model. Like Namrata mentioned, processing fee is now legal. Unless you have a self-sustainable model, most of the eye bank, like Dr. Muscati told, 760, and very few are working as eye bank and rest are eye donation center. And just now, Sunita mentioned the expansion of function, pre-cut tissue and DMEC scroll is for last, I'll say 10 years, but still very few eye banks are doing this. So just to briefly speak about the history of eye banking, it started in 1905. It is more than 100 years now. But only good thing is we just started immediately after the US eye bank started, 1945. But unfortunately, we have not progressed as per the law, collection, utilization, or technology like US. Then we started eye donation fortnight. This is eye donation fortnight after almost 40 years. Eye donation fortnight started, then HIV screening. One after another screening method also is included. So good thing like Namrata mentioned in the gadget, it has changed to eye donation technician can collect the cornea. Again, this is for last 10 years. In the past, only ophthalmologists were doing. So what is the change in structure in last few years? Only thing is, I'll say the eye bank manager is a new term, which was not new term. It's in last once Sight Life has started this eye bank manager last 15 years. The eye bank manager, otherwise it was medical director and technician and counselor. I think with the new technology, mobile, internet, so ophthalmologist round the clock is mostly not required. It is, I mean, iBank also most of the time iBank is closed because you can take the phone call. Even people do, although consent is not allowed by telephonic thing, but telephonic screening. I remember Little Flower Hospital, they presented in one of the meeting. They do a lot of tele screening. So that is, it is not round the clock. Ophthalmologist has to be there in the iBank or iBank have to be open. In the term of infrastructure, again, a clean room where pre-cut tissue is available. A specular microscope, I'll not say present, but still most of the eye bank they don't have. But in future, I think there will be all the eye bank will have that. And the storage refrigerator was there, but like Manisha showed, 24-hour monitoring was not available in many places. Now some of the eye bank has 24-hour refrigerator, which maintains 24-hour, and you know how much time the current was not there or the temperature was not maintained. Depending on that, you can do. And the transport facility, most of the time it was used only in-house. Now transport facility across this country you can send. Then coming to the function, what is the present? So tissue harvesting, most of the time it was voluntary 20 years back, and most of the eye bank were doing whole law, and tissue evaluation was restricted to cross-examination, and tissue preservation was moist chamber. So for last 10-15 years, SCRP has started, and most of the eye bank has moved from whole globe to corneoscleral reel, and slit lamp specular microscopy is mandatory, and like I mentioned, MK medium and cornisol. So in the future, it depends on the, I don't think any other mode, but maybe tele-counseling, but harvesting will be voluntary plus SCRP. Currently, this proportion varies from different place to different place. It is somewhere 80% voluntary, somewhere like in our eye bank, it is almost 90-95%. Drishtidan eye bank, it is 95%. I think good ideal combination is we should not be dependent on SCRP, although we know the quality of cornea is very good compared to voluntary. So maybe ideal situation wherever we don't have a voluntary, the voluntary should increase. And the tissue evaluation, many of the European eye bank and US eye bank, they do the examination in OCT, especially for the pericut tissue. So maybe in future it will be part of the examination, and long-term solution with newer antimicrobial and anti. Similarly, tissue distribution, it was local, and tissue preparation was nothing, like it was a full thickness tissue 15-20 years back. There is no quality control, like Manisha mentioned. There is no quality control, only collection and utilization. You don't. So tissue distribution, Corneal distribution system is working, and pre-cut dissectomic scroll has been started. Accreditation is there, but it is not a mandatory now. Dr. Muscati, I would just like to know that, to inform that we are planning to start mandatory accreditation. But to start with, we should start in a smaller scale for the IBAN from the EBA side. And tissue distribution, we may not send across the border as per the law and the requirement in our country. Maybe in future, again, next 10, 15 years, we'll be able to send the tissue across the border. And in future, maybe it will not be only cornea, should be in addition to sclera, AMG, we should be able to distribute cultured endothelial cell and mesenchymal stromal cell. So like I mentioned, tissue recovery and evaluation, many eye bank has transformed from corneal surgeon to trained technician. In fact, they are happy that they don't have to wait for the ophthalmologist for the evaluation, and they can easily send the tissue whenever they want. And this is the modification, is the term of tissue preservation. Regarding the number, if you see 20 years back, we are in 26,000, but the highest till now was 57,000. All of us know because of the COVID, it went down. But again, all of us are aware this is nothing compared to our goal of 2 lakhs. It is 1/4 of the task. So we should be able to reach 2 lakh, should try for as early as possible. But definitely in the next 10 years, we should reach, which was supposed to be done much before, but with a lot of voluntary HCRP, spreading of awareness in this eye donation fortnight, we should be able to reach that goal. So current need of research, why do we need in the future? We need a lot of antimicrobial coverage because we don't have antifungal. There are a lot of research on antifungal. However, it is not a routine any cornea except organ culture. And intermediate solution, like I mentioned, we need to change to antifungal, enhance endothelial health by changing the preservative media. Epithelial preservation, we need to focus on epithelial preservation. Epithelial is equally important as endothelial. So future of eye banking, we need to improve collection and utilization, not only number, also quality, tissue distribution. There should be central distribution. Quality should be mandatory to decrease the adverse reaction. And research, we should focus on research rather than number and policy. Amrita has already focused, but I'll just touch. So the perception of eye banking and eye donation should not only be restricted to only private, it should be public as well as non-NGO plus government. And rather than only eye donation fortnight, it should be throughout the year. Tissue collection, utilization, there should be proper screening method to improve the utilization. In addition to training of retrieval, there should be the eye donation technician should be trained with lamellar cut wherever the facility is available. I don't think all the eye banks should do the pre-cut. It is not a cost effective, like Sunita mentioned, DMAC also. So maybe some eye bank which collect more than 1,000 cornea, they can plan for lamellar surgery by a technician. And tissue distribution, the central distribution is working, but they need a robust system which can be done by EBI, in addition MOTO and NPCB. We can have a registry. We discussed about donor registry, waitlist registry, and of course, graft registry is one of my dream that we should have a graft registry like Australian graft registry. Quality assurance, we are planning to start accreditation. NABS does for the hospital, but not definitely specifically for eye bank. Like NABH, we are planning for a smaller eye bank, some few criteria, and a larger eye bank, total criteria. And it is high time in Indian eye banks should plan for research, which is, it may be, it may not be always basic research, but some research is relevant to our country regarding the utilization. For example, I remember 15, 20 years back, no poisoning was used. But again, with the publication research, we started using organophosphorus poisoning. And we need a lot of changes in our policy. We need a lot of transplantation center. The government should be friendly to do registration for transplantation center. Otherwise, there are corneal surgeons nowadays for the corneal distribution system. They're able to get the cornea, but they keep on waiting for the transplantation center registration. So beyond cornea collection, as I mentioned, it should be more common in pre-cut tissue preparation and DMAC preparation. So way forward, eye banking activity, again, it is not there in many states in Northeast states. Most of the states are still there's no single eye bank there. We need more eye bank activity in all state. Eye bank training center and eye donation counselor, eye bank technician. In the training center, not many training center, but few training center which will cater the trained eye donation center and eye bank technician. And most of the transplant are failed because we don't have people to follow up these patients, and patients do not come for the follow-up where they are getting transplanted. So we need to do general ophthalmologist which will train people, and more number of trained corneal surgeon, and more number of lamellar surgeries. And we need to, because this eye donation fortnight especially, we get a lot of data which is not correct and which is not matching. So everybody asks what is the latest. So we need to do a latest epidemiological information, corneal graft registry as well as donor registry, mandatory accreditation. I think all of this may be future, maybe 10, 15 years we should have this, and involvement in advocacy and policy making. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sujata, for covering very nicely, yesterday, today, tomorrow in iBanking. I have a question for you as well as any of our panelists. So one thing which has come through from your talk and previous talks is the importance of training for the technicians or our counselors or the people who are involved in this. So how often, is there a recommendation maybe in Dr. Manisha's book also, of how often you need to train them, and is it okay to have an in-house training, or do they need to go to any of those training centers to do this?
Actually, there's no recommendation, but last iBank Association meeting in Banaras, we started doing certification, and the certification again we're doing this time in Bhubaneswar. So because there is everybody trains their own, there is no certification system, there's no university also gives. So this certification, we're thinking it will be valid for 4 years. They need to redo this. So that is one forum where they can do certified by EBI. Otherwise, many iBanks are training themselves.
Yeah, training themselves. Yeah, as we've also done.
And when we talk about training, the only thing is that annual competency review in most of the iBanks is happening, and that's a good healthy practice if you just inculcate. And you can use some models like the Reaper model, which we use in the iBank Association of India training also. So there are some rubrics which are there for the technicians, and they can be easily used by the iBanks, and the manager can be trained to just do that for the technicians. So it doesn't even need a doctor's time or anything.
And if you link it to a PLB, a productivity linked bonus type of thing, if they don't pass that proficiency test with X amount of marks, then they get less bonus. So it becomes a financial thing for them to ship up and shape up. Yeah.
Yeah, I think actually, Dr. Muscati, in the last EBI, when we did the training program, and I remember it came with the point that most of the technicians thought that they will appear and they will pass. So there was one training session, and after that, and some of them came back to me saying, no, we've done that, I should pass. And I said, it's not, you won't get the certificate unless these percentage these are the critical points. If you've missed them, you have to come back. We are sorry, we cannot give it to 100%. If you've not passed, you've not passed. And I think, thank you, Dr. Sujata, for that opportunity, which actually helped us also understand. And we have now the data of that entire presentation, which maybe in the EBI we can discuss and share with each other.
This certification also is not for new trainees because it's just a check. So we always encourage those people who are already doing, they should appear for the certification. It's not a new, like you just do this and pass. And this time we conducted series of webinar. Let us see whether the people have attended the webinar and they will do better.
Thanks. Thank you. We'll move on to our next talk.
The next talk, I think we can move to.
Yeah.
I'll introduce our next speaker, Mr. Nikhil K. Masurkar. He's the CEO of Entod Pharmaceuticals. He's a visionary and a dynamic leader and serves as a CEO of Entod Pharma, a pioneering specialty research-based pharma company that is specialized in ophthalmic, ENT, and dermatological medicines. With a profound background in pharma research and an unwavering commitment to the innovations, Mr. Nikhil has propelled Entod Pharma to become a prominent player in the healthcare industry. Welcome, Mr. Nikhil, and over to you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, ma'am. So basically, my talk is about some of the efforts that we are taking for creating an awareness for eye donation in India. So before I start, I would just like to express my gratitude to my great-grandmother on the left and my grandfather on the right, who founded and taught in 1977. I also like to pay my respects to my mentor, the late Dr. S.S. Badrinath sir, who really gave me the guidance and the wisdom to carry on my mission. So we started the concept of Pledge My Eyes in late 2019, just before the pandemic. It was a discussion between Dr. Natarajan sir and me that we should start some kind of a website so that we can create a bridge between the public and the eye banks. So in the next 15 to 20 days after that discussion, we developed this website. It was a very basic website, which we then, kind of improved. And then within a month, it was ready. We are doing it through our own NGO, which is called as Matanand Welfare Foundation. Although we, the promoters of the company and our company, are the main donors for this foundation, it also has a lot of private donors, family, friends also who've contributed to many of the awareness programs that we run under Matanand. And then obviously Dr. Namrata Sharma ma'am got us introduced to the EBAI, and then we started carrying out some of these awareness activities in a much more organized way. So big thank you to Dr. Natarajan sir, and also to Dr. Namrata Sharma ma'am also for believing in this cause of ours and helping us to really build this website from scratch. So I wouldn't go into the stats or the numbers. We all know there is a great need for more corneal donations in India. But the website basically talks about various ways. I mean, we're trying to have various ways to get to the public. So this is one of the banners on the website where it talks about, gift your sight. Then we talk about, it kind of targeting the younger people as well, younger members of the public. We talk about, while you leave a will, you should leave a vision as well. So all of these positive messages are there on the website. But beyond that, we also educate the public and a lot of the questions that they have on eye donation. There's a lot of misconceptions and myths around eye donation. Some are religious in nature, some are just pure ignorance. So we try and answer those questions as much as possible. The pledge site itself is very simple. So basically, in 2 simple clicks, you can pledge to donate your eyes. It's a very, very simple site. Not much information is needed. And the whole aim is to kind of get people excited about eye donation and make it cool in a way. So how it works is basically you fill in your details, you get a certificate with a unique identification number, and then we then pass that information to the EBAI and to other nearby eye banks. And then every year we remind those people that they've pledged to donate their eyes, because it's very easy to forget what you've kind of pledged for. So we keep them kind of, keep good communication with them. So it's a very simple thing. So our campaign is obviously now we are in the eye donation fortnight, but we do campaigns all throughout the year. We do it on World Sight Day, Diwali, Christmas, so all the religious festivals. We have our campaigns. We collaborate with a lot of eye hospitals and Indian eye doctors all over India for these awareness campaigns. I was talking in the previous comment that I made, is try to create a culture change when it comes to organ donation in India. We also visit schools and colleges. And what I found is in some of the offline activities we've done in schools, that children are very much receptive to the concept of organ donation. They don't have the same kind of questions or hesitancy when it comes to organ donation. So a lot of them are very keen to do this or to get involved in it in the future. In fact, on our pledge side, I think about 50% of our of the people who made the pledges are under the age of 30 years. So that's a good sign that, in the future we have a public that is much more willing to pledge to donate their eyes. We also then do senior citizen events as well, because obviously they would kind of cater to the more immediate need. We have public awareness events for middle-aged to senior citizens as well. And yes, as Dr. Muscati said, that we need to involve the Rotary and Lions Club as well for some of these activities. Online activities is an area where we've done quite well, but we have a long way to go. So we basically get influencers on board, about 100 to 200 influencers a year, talking about eye donation, talking about, busting some of the myths. We are quite active on social media in this area. So we use Meta, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube quite a lot. We're also involved in kind of trending hashtags as well, just to raise the awareness of eye donation. So we have our hashtag Pledge My Eyes or Let Your Eyes Live Forever, which have trended quite a lot in the last 2 years. And I think that's some success, but yes, we have a long way to go. And then we use our PR very effectively for press releases to get the news media kind of involved, kind of engage with journalists on this as well. So these are some of the things that we're doing. And I think, as one of the doctors pointed out, we need a real change in the awareness when it comes to eye donation. We need to make it acceptable socially. We need to make it cool for the younger generation. And in the future, as many doctors suggested, there needs to be a mandatory register, for all the donors, like they have in the UK, for example. So this is just some of the outreach programs that we've done with hospitals in India and also with the public as well. And we've had good success from all of this. In the news also, we've been constantly putting in our press releases in different languages as well, which I'm sure has helped in some way or the other. Social media, if you can see, like recently we had a Pledge My Eyes trend at #2 in India. We also have various social media posts. We have influencers, and we have all of this content that we post from time to time, which gives us more pledges. So far on, since we started the site, we've had 3380 pledges, up to the 31st of last month. But it's a start. We have a long way to go, and we need a good public-private partnership to actually take this further. I mean, we've tried to start something by ourselves, and I mean, I don't want my name attached to it for too long. I mean, I may not be remembered tomorrow, but in the future, I want this side and this initiative to be remembered so that we would, solve this problem that we have here in India. So we have a long way to go, and I would love doctors to be more involved with this, and we can work together on really doing some genuine work in this area. Thank you all, and thanks a lot to the AIOS, the scientific committee, and the EBAI for allowing us to be a part of this event and for allowing me to speak. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Nikhilji. Ma'am, Namrata ma'am.
Thank you, Nikhil. I think that's a brilliant way of doing things, and if entrepreneurs also get involved in it, then the reach only increases. It's nice to see that there are 3,000 plus pledges already there. Some of the eye banks also can't, boast of this number. And I'm sure if we, all of us collectively help in this, then this would increase further. The aim should be to touch 10,000 plus. And let's find out ways and means to do it. And with your support, I think we should be able to do it. Again, I would like to thank you for a wonderful talk that you gave and for this initiative that has been taken by Indore Pharmaceuticals.
Thank you. Dr. Sharon, next speaker, please.
Yeah, so Next speaker is Mr. Patrick Emery, who is the Associate Vice President for Asia at the Cure Blindness Project. He has done 15 years of eye care experience across US, Asia, and Africa. Welcome, Mr. Emery. Over to you for your talk today.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much for having me here today. I'm very grateful to the AIOS scientific community, Dr. Sharon and Dr. Namrata for the honor of being here. Thank you so much. My name is Patrick Emery. I am the Associate Vice President at Cure Blindness Project, which may be a new name for some people. We were previously known as SightLife, but we have rebranded as Cure Blindness Project, and looking forward to some rapid growth in India. I'm going to talk today about cornea tissue sharing in India, a model for the world, and what's next. For those of you that don't know, India actually has the most successful tissue sharing model of any country globally outside of the US. And it's quite a treasure that I think many people are not fully aware of, and something we want to talk about, and what is in the future for the cornea distribution system. This is a system that is operated jointly between Cure Blindness Project and Eye Bank Association of India. So why does CDS, Cornea Distribution System, exist? So we know that many quality eye banks are concentrated in few cities, oftentimes larger cities, and in certain states. But however, we know that surgeons are situated across the country and not equally dispersed. The need is not equally dispersed. We know that there's a need for reduced travel for transplant and follow-up for patients. We know that opening and running eye banks is not easy. And we know that we need to promise quality of tissue. We also know that any solution that is going to be adopted nationally needs to be community-driven and community-owned. And that is how the CDS operates. A little bit of history about the cornea distribution system. This was launched in August of 2012. A steering committee was set up for overall guidance and direction to ensure fair and equitable distribution of corneal tissues nationally. A medical committee was responsible for all clinical standards, including the depth to preservation time, donor suitability, storage media, and usage policies. And a distribution committee oversaw the operational standards like packing protocol and tissue processing charges. In the early days, each committee met multiple times and discussed each question to make sure that we had a system that would be widely trusted within the country. So the cornea distribution system has grown rapidly, as you can see in the data on the far right. Of note, though, this cornea distribution system is unique in that we do not receive any funds for the service. This is a service that is fully funded by Cure Blindness Project. We pay for all the staff and all the IT-related work related to it, and we do not charge any fee related to placing tissues. This is all supported by Cure Blindness Project and primarily through philanthropic funds from the US. It ensures that excess corneal tissue is quality certified and that eye banks can ultimately utilize tissue that is not placeable or that is not needed within their home local area. So historically, if you look at eye banking activity many years ago, there was high level of wastage. The eye banks would have a set of surgeons. They would try to place tissue with their local surgeons, and if there was no local need, there was oftentimes a waste of tissue. The ultimate goal of the cornea distribution system is to make sure that tissues are made available to the larger geography if they are not needed in the local area. And we've found that has been widely proven to be a successful model. It was originally demonstrated by Vision Share in the US, and now successfully for the second time globally demonstrated by the cornea distribution system in India. For those of you that are not aware, it is simply a network in between the eye banks and the surgeons. So when an eye bank has a tissue that is not needed in their local area, they notify the cornea distribution system. Similarly, if a surgeon needs tissue, they notify the cornea distribution system. And in both of these steps, the CDS staff identify what is the tissue available, what are the various quality parameters, and we also look at what are the surgeon's requirements, what type of tissue, what are the quality requirements. Based on that, the cornea distribution system staff match the tissue with the need and facilitate the connection between the eye bank and the surgeon. The payment for the processing fee is handled directly between the eye bank and the surgeon. Cure Blindness Project, Eye Bank Association of India, and the Cornea Distribution System do not handle the funds. The payment for the processing fee is handled directly between the eye bank and the surgeon. When the prioritization and matching is occurring, we follow the equitable distribution policy that is really a foundation of the cornea distribution system. We look at medical prioritization, whether it's a child, pediatric, or an adult patient, whether it's emergent or routine. We look at the request date and time, and we look at the logistical considerations. After the surgery is completed, we provide some support in making sure that there's good communication between the eye bank and the surgeon to make sure that they're able to obtain reimbursement, to make sure they're able to get recipient information forms from the surgeons, to make sure that adverse reaction reporting is conducted appropriately, and help to mitigate any type of incidents or incident management. But again, this is more facilitating conversations between the eye banks and the surgeons. Eligibility criteria. The eye banks need commitment to community distribution, and they also need a commitment to quality. There's been a lot of conversations about quality in the meeting today. It is critical, especially if we want there to be wide support of and trust for the quality of tissue going through the distribution system. And the surgeons need to be trained in cornea, they need to have HOTA certificates, and they need to adhere to the distribution system policies. Here you can see the growth of the cornea distribution system. You can see that there was a large slowdown related to the COVID-19 pandemic, but the CDS system has continued to perform at a high level for quite a long period of time. With 2023, almost achieving 3,000 tissues distributed, and almost 100 cities covered, and approximately 23 states covered. "400 surgeons are onboarded. There are 20 to 30 new surgeons added each year. About 25,900 corneas are distributed program to date. Makes up for 18% of total transplants happening in the country. We have a 100% transplant rate. There are 6 eye bank partners across 25 states with more than 100 cities covered." We conducted a satisfaction survey in 2023, and there's a lot of data here. I'm happy to share more of this offline as well. But ultimately, there was really high rating of satisfaction. And when the survey was done based on a Net Promoter Score model, and Net Promoter Score anywhere above 0 based on the algorithm is really good. And I'll share with you what the NPS was. In question about whether I feel satisfied with quality of service and support provided by CDS, the blue indicates always, the red indicates mostly, and the green indicates sometimes. The question about I am satisfied with the quality of tissue received through CDS, the blue indicates always, the red indicates mostly, and the green indicates sometimes. Does the tissue quality match with the tissue detail offered? Blue is always, red is mostly. And we also asked, are you satisfied with the packing and temperature control, as well as whether the quality of pre-cut tissue provided through CDS matches my surgical needs? The ultimate NPS score was 84. Anywhere above 20 is considered excellent. So this is an excellent Net Promoter Score. something that is really critical, especially to the CDS staff who manage it. Many of you may know Umesh, who is responsible for the day-to-day operations. So it's very clear that it is a widely used and appreciated service. But we also know that it's been operating in a very similar way for many, many years. Right now, the financing of the program is really 100% dependent on Cure Blindness Project, formerly SightLife. There's only one free airline option, so there continues to be high expense related to tissue logistics. We know that there are inconsistent bus and train logistic options. We know that there is community support among surgeons, but it has not been adopted at the government level in many ways. And we do not have a clear roadmap for what the future looks like. This is something that Cure Blindness Project would like to engage with the community in 2025. And how do we establish a long-term sustainable model for the CDS system? Does that mean that it continues to operate as is? Does it continue to rely on philanthropic funds? Does it mean that there's some type of a fee for service related to the distribution service operations? Does it mean that it's handed over to the government or an industry association or other ideas? But this is a community-owned system. We want to make sure that it is viable for a long time. So it will be we very much will appreciate community engagement in creating a long-term roadmap for this vital service. Since Cure Blindness Project is simply the operator, we are not the decision maker in what the future looks like. This is going to need to be a community level decision. With that, we look forward to many more conversations with the community in 2025 as we create the roadmap. But very much value the partnership with iBank Association of India. We know that globally, many countries are looking at this model and envious that this has worked so well in India. And looking forward to making sure that it continues to be a great service for years and years to come. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Emery. It was really very interesting to see all the changes and the future which can come with collaboration, which, as we've seen through this entire webinar, is so crucial for taking iBanking forward and making it reach all over India and the world. Any of our panelists, any comments? Dr. Maskati, Namrata Sharma ma'am?
No, for a long time, we in Maharashtra couldn't participate in CDS because by law, by state law, we were not allowed to send tissue out of Maharashtra. We fought a long and hard battle with our High Court, and we've got that reversed just a few months ago. So we look forward to partnering with CDS, with the CDS distribution system and contributing corneas to the national grid in future.
That is great news. Congratulations for that policy change. I was not aware of that. Congrats.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to ask you, Patrick, the CDS program is going on very well, but your this thing has changed. So do you think it is, I mean, it's ongoing and continuing?
Yeah, we ultimately what we want is for it to be successful. And so we are willing to continue operating it in partnership with EBAI because we want to make sure it continues to operate well. But if there's a different decision that the community would like to take, we're open to that as well. We just want to be a good partner. Well, yes, we have gone through a rebrand to Cure Blindness Project. Our commitment to Cornea has not changed, and actually we are dramatically increasing our work and our investment in India even this year.
That's very nice. That's what I just wanted to clarify. Good. I think this has really helped to at least equitably distribute the corneas from the areas where it was in excess to the areas where it is actually required. So it has kind of changed the morphology of the morphology where, you know, or the geography of where the corneal transplant should be there.
that brings us to the end of our webinar for this evening. I think we had a wonderful set of talks and discussions. Big thank you to all our speakers, panelists who have given their valuable time and lent their experience to us. Dr. Namrata ma'am, would you like to say a word of thanks?
So thank you. I would like to thank again all the speakers and all the panelists who could give us time on this webinar, and particularly a big thank you to the Endot Pharmaceuticals for being a part of it and helping with this, and the cause of eye banking and corneal transplantation.
Thank you. Dr. Maskati?
No, I'm just overwhelmed with the amount of new stuff, which I think a lot of take-home messages for everybody and all the stakeholders, and hope we can build from here onwards and look forward to just continued progress with the iBanking movement. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, all.